Hi, I'm going to start over again. The first film that I didn't come out quite right, so I'm going to go back and read it again, and hopefully this one is going to come out the way it should. And I'm going to try to look at the camera, not so much over there. So I'm going to move my book on this side and give you a little bit of a better view. Sorry, didn't mean to do that. Here we go. American translation. This is about St. Clair. You know, her mother got the name from her husband. When she was coming here to San Francisco, her paperwork was not in order according to the immigration people. So he had to take care of a lot of paperwork. And so with all the confusion of everything, she really didn't have a name, even though she had her Chinese paperwork with her. They didn't recognize it. So he just fixed the paperwork and gave her his last name. And so that's why you have St. Clair. And it's called Lena St. Clair. And this title chapter is called Rice Husband. On this day, I believe my mother has the mysterious ability to see things before they happen. She has a Chinese saying for what she knows, Chang Wang Shan. If the lips are gone, the teeth will be cold, which means, I suppose, one thing isn't always the result of another. But she does not predict when earthquakes will come or how the stock market will do. She sees only bad things that affect our family, and she knows what causes them. But now she laments that she never did anything to stop them. One time when I was growing up in San Francisco, she looked out the way of our new apartment and sat too sleepily on the hill. She said the new baby in her womb would still fall out dead, and it did. When I plumped in my bathroom fixtures store, opened up across the street from our bank, my mother said the bank would soon have all its money drained away, and 1 month later, an officer of the bank was arrested for embezzlement. And just about after my father died last year, she said she knew this would happen because the Philadelphia plant my father had planted and gave to her had withered and died. Despite the fact that she watered it faithfully, she said the plant had damage to its roots and the water could not get into it. The autopsy reports that later received showed that my father had a 90% blockage of the arteries before he died of the heart. At age 74, my father was not Chinese like my mother, but English, Irish American, who enjoyed his 5 slices of bacon and 3 eggs sunny side up every morning. I remember the ability of my mother because now she is visiting my husband and me in the house we just bought in Woodside, and I wondered what she would see. Harold and I were lucky to find this place, which was near the summit of Highway 9, then a right, left down 3 forks of unmarked dirt roads. Unmarked because the residents always tear down the signs to keep out salesmen, developers, and city inspectors. We are only a 40-minute drive to my mother's apartment in San Francisco. This is a 60-minute ordeal coming back from San Francisco. When my mother was with us in the car after we got to the 2-lane winding road to the summit, she touched her hand gently to Harold's shoulder and softly said, "Ah, tires squiggling." And then a little later, too much tear and wear on the car. Harold had smiled and slowed down, but I could see his hands were clenching the steering wheel as the Jaguar, as it glanced nervously in his rearview mirror at the line of impatient cars that were growing by the minute, and I was incredibly glad to watch this discomfort. He was always the one who tailgated old ladies in their Buicks, honking his horn and reviving the engine as if he was running them down, and then he would pull over. At that same time, I hated myself for being mean spirited, for thinking Harold deserved his torment, yet I couldn't help myself. I was mad. I was mad at Harold, and he was exasperating it with me. That morning, before we picked my mother up, he said, "You should pay for the exterminators because Magogi is your cat and they are your fleas. It's only fair. None of your friends could ever believe we fight over something as stupid as fleas, but they they would if also never believe that our problems are much deeper than that, not fleas, or so deep I don't even know where the bottom is." And now that my mother is here, she's staying for a week or until the electricians are done rewiring her building in San Francisco. We have no pretense, nothing's the matter. We have to just pretend. Meanwhile, she asked over and over again why we had to pay so much for a renovated barn and line poles on the 4 acres of land, 2 of which are covered with redwood trees and poison oak. Actually, she didn't really ask. She just say, "Ah, so much money, so much." And we show her the difference in the different parts of the house and the land. And her laments always compel Harold to explain to my mother in simple terms, "Well, you see, it's the details that cost so much. Like this wood floor, it's hand painted and it's bleached. And the walls here, the marbleized effects that it has, and the sponge that it looks like it's worth." And my mother nods and agrees. Bleach and sponge cost so much. During our brief tour at the house, she already found the flaws. She says that slant on the floor makes her feet as if she's running downhill. she she thinks the guest rooms where we're staying, which is really a former hayloft shaped like a sloped roof, has two lopsides. She sees spiders in the high corners and even fleas jumping in the air. Pa ha pa pa. Little spiders, a hot oil, my mother's note underneath breath, and all the fancy details she cost so much. This house still a barn. She can see all of this, and it annoys me that all she sees are the bad parts. But then I look around and everything she said is true. And the conveniences she makes me, what else is going to be? Between Harold and me, she knows what's going to happen to us because I remember something she saw when I was just 8 years old. My mother had looked in my rice bowl and told me I would marry a bad man. "Ah, Lena," you had said after the dinner so many years ago, "your future husbands have one pork mark or every rice you not finished." She put on the bowl down. I once known a pockmarked man, mean man, bad man. And I thought of a mean neighbor boy who had tiny pits on his cheeks, and it was true. Those marks were there the size of rice grains. This boy was about 12 and his name was Arnold. Arnold would shoot rubber bands at my legs wherever I walked, past his building on the way home from school. And on the way back, he would throw those rubber bands. Oh, crushing on my legs below my knees. I didn't want this cruel boy to be my future husband, so I picked up the cold bowl of rice and scraped the last few grains into my mouth, then smiled at my mother. confident my future husband would not be Arnold, but someone whose face was as smooth and as porcelain in the now. And now the rice bowl is clean. But my mother sighed. Oh, yesterday you not finished rice either. I thought of those unfinished mouthfuls of rice, and then the grains that lined my bowl the day before, and the day before that. By the minute, my 8-year-old heart grew more and more terror stricken over the growing possibilities that my future husband was fated to be this man, boy Arnold. And thanks to my poor eating habits, his hideous face would be eventually resembled a critter of the moon. Oh, no, not critter, of craters of the moon. This would have been a funny incident to remember from my childhood, but it actually a memory I recall from time to time with a mixture of nausea and remorse. My loathing for Arnold had grown to such a point that I eventually found a way to make him die. I let one thing result from another. Of course, all of it would have been just loosely connected and coincidence, a loosely connected coincidence. And whether that's true or not, I know the intention was there, because when I wanted something to happen or not happen, I began to look at the events and all the things of relevant of an opportunity to take and to avoid. I found my opportunity the same week my mother told me about the rice bowl and my future husband. I saw a shocking film at a Sunday school. I remember the teacher had dimmed lights so that all of it we could see were the silhouettes of one another. Then the teacher looked at us, a room full of squirrely, well-fed Chinese American children, and she said, "This film will show you why you should not give things to God to do God's work." She said, "I want you to think about a nickel's worth of candy money, or however much you eat each week. Your good prayers are plenty. Your nickel wafers are good. Your juju beads, and compare that to what you are about to see. And I also want you to think about what your true blessings in life are really, and what they like and are." And then she set the film projector clattering away. The film showed missionaries in Africa and in India. These souls worked with people whose legs were swollen to the size of tree trunks, whose numbed limbs and became as twisted as a jungle vines. But the most terrible of the afflictions were men and women of leprosy. Their faces were covered with every kind of misery I could imagine, pits and pustules and cracks and bumps and fishes. Ooh, I was there, sure, erupt with the same venom of snails withering in a bed of salt. If my mother had been in the room, she would have told me these poor people were victims of future husbands and wives who had fallen to eat platefuls of food. After seeing this film, I did a terrible thing. I saw what I had to do. I would not have to marry Arnold. I began to leave more rice in my bowl, and then I extended my prodigal ways beyond Chinese food. I did not finish my cream corn broccoli, rice krispies, peanut butter sandwiches, and once when I bit into a candy bar, I saw how lumpy it was, how full of secret dark spots and creamy goo. I sacrificed that as well. I considered probably nothing would have happened to Arnold, that he might not get leprosy, move to Africa, and die. And somehow I balanced the dark possibilities that he might. He didn't die right away, not right away, in fact. It was some 5 years later, by which time I had become quite thin. I had stopped eating not because of Arnold, whom I had been long forgotten, but to be fashionable and anorexic like all the other 13-year-old girls who were dieting and finding other ways to suffer as teenagers. I was sitting at the breakfast table waiting for my mother to finish packing a sack lunch, which I always promptly threw away as soon as I got around the corner. My father was eating his fingers, dabbling the ends of bacon into the egg yolks, and with one hand while holding the newspaper in the other hand. Oh my, listen to this, he said, still dabbling, and that's when he announced that Arnold Ridgman, a boy who lived in our old neighborhood in Oakland, had died of complications from measles. He had just been accepted to Cal State Hayward and was planning to become a prototist. I think that's a pharmacist. Doctors were at the first battling of the disease, which they report to extremely rare, generally attack children because the ages of 10 and 12 months, 2 years after they have concentrated the measles virus. The boy had a mild case of measles when he was 12. His mother reported problems this year were first noticed when the boy developed a motor coordination problem and mental lethargy, which increased until he fell into a coma. The boy's age was 17. He never regained consciousness. Didn't you know that boy? Asked my father, and I stood there mute. This is shame, said my mother, looking at me. This is terrible shame. And I thought he could see through me. Yep, she could see through me. I was the one who'd caused Honor to die. I was terrified. That night in my room, I gorged myself. I had stolen a half-gallon of strawberry ice cream from the freezer, and I forced a spoonful after spoonful after spoonful down my throat. And later, for several hours after that, I sat hunched on the fire escape, landing outside my bedroom, retching back into the ice cream container, and I remember wondering why it was eating something so good could make me feel so terrible, while vomiting something terrible could make me feel so good. The thought that I could have changed or caused Arnold's death is not ridiculous. Perhaps he's destined to be husband, because I think to myself, even today, how can the world and all its chaos come up with so many coincidences, so many similarities, and exact opposites? Why did Arnold single me out? From his rubber bands he tortured. How is it that he contracted measles the same year I began consciously to hate him, and why I didn't think Arnold in the first place? When my mother looked in the rice bowl and then came up to hate him so much, isn't hate merely the result of wounded love? And even when I can finally dismiss all these ridiculous, I still feel that somehow, for the most part, we deserve what we get. I didn't get Arnold. I got Harold. Harold and I worked at the same architectural firm, Livington and our Associates. Only Harold's Livington is a partner, and I'm an associate. We met 8 years before we started Livington and Associate. I was 28, a project assistant, and he was 34. We both worked in the restaurant design development division of Harnd, Kelly, and Davis. We started seeing each other for working lunches to talk about the projects, and we would always split the tab, right in half, even if I usually ordered only a salad because I have this tendency of gaining weight easily. Later, when we started meeting secretly for dinner, we still divided the bill, and we would just continue that way, everything right down the middle. I encouraged it. Sometimes I insisted on paying for the whole thing. Drinks too. Oh, even the tip. Lena, you are so extraordinary, Harold said, after 6 months of dinner, 5 months of post-pandemia love-making, and 1 week of timid and silly love confessions. We were lying in bed between the 2 purple sheets I had bought for him. His old set of white sheets was stained in revealing places, not very romantic. And he nuzzled my neck and he'd whisper, I don't think I've ever met another woman who's so together. And I remember feeling a hiccup of fear upon hearing his words, another woman? Because I could imagine dozens, hundreds, adoring women eager to buy Harold's breakfast and lunch and dinner to feel the pleasure of his breath on their skin. Then he bent my neck and said in a rush, nor anyone who is soft, is squishy, and lovable as you. And with that I swooned, inside, caught off balance by the latest revelation of love, wondering how such a remarkable person as Harold could think I was extraordinary. Now that I am angry at Harold, it's hard to remember what was so remarkable about him, and I know they're there. I know that they are there. Whew, couldn't get that out of my mouth. The good qualities, because I wasn't that stupid to fall in love with him to marry him. All I could remember is how awful and luckily I felt, and consequently how worried I was. All of this undeserved good fortune would some day slip away. When I fantasize about moving in with him, I also dread up my deepest fears that he would tell me I smelled bad, and I had terrible bathroom habits, that my taste in music and television was appalling. I worried about Harold would someday get a new prescription for his glasses, and he'd put them on one morning and look at me up and down and say, why, gosh, you aren't the girl I thought you were, are you? Duh. And I think that feeling of fear never left me, that I would be caught someday exposed as a sham of a woman, but resently a friend of mine, Rose, who's in therapy now because her marriage was already falling apart, told me these kinds of thoughts are compliance in women like us. At first, I thought I was because I was raised with all these Chinese humilities, Rose said, or that maybe it was because when we're Chinese, we're supposed to accept everything, flow with the two and flow with the Tao, and not make any waves. But my therapist said, why do you blame your culture? You're enthusiastic. And I remembered reading an article about baby boomers, how we accept the best, and when we get it, we're worried about maybe we should have accepted the more, because even accepted more, because it's all diminishing returns after a certain age. After that, after my talk with Rose, I felt better about myself, and I thought, of course, Harold and I are equal in many respects. He's not exactly handsome in the classic sense, although clear-skinned and attractive in that Weverly intelligent way. And I may not be reviving beauty, but I may not be a reviving beauty, but a lot of women in my aerobics class, tell me I am exotic in an unusual way, and they're jealous that my breasts don't sag now that small breasts are in. Plus, one of my clients said, I have incredibly vitrally exuberant tastes. So I think I deserve someone like Harold, and I mean it in a good sense, not like a karma. We're equals. We're equals. I also smart. I have common sense, and I'm an intuitive, highly so. I was the one who told Harold he was good enough to start his own firm. When we were still working at Harnd, Kelly, and Davis, I said, Harold, this firm knows just what a good deal is. It has you. You're the goose who lays the golden egg. If you started your own business today, you'd walk away with more than half the restaurant clients. And he said, laughing, half? Boy, that's love. And I shouted back, laughing at him, more than half. You're that good. You're the best there in the restaurant design and development. You know it, and I know it, and so do a lot of restaurant developers. That was the night he decided to go for it, and he put it in which a phrase I have personally destered ever since. A bank I used to work for adopted the slogan for its employees, productively contest. But still, I said to Harold, Harold, I want to help you to go for it. I mean, we're going to need money to start this business. He wouldn't hear of taking any money from me, not as if it was a favor, nor a loan, nor an investment, or even at the down payment of a partnership. He said he valued our relationship so much. He didn't want to condemn it, or condiment it with money. He explained, I wouldn't want to hand out any more than you'd want one. As long as we keep the money things separate, we'll all be able and sure to love for each other. We'll share that love for each other. I wanted to protest. I wanted to say, no, I'm not really this way about money the way we've been doing it. I'm really into giving freely. But I didn't know where to be and where to begin. I wanted to ask him what women had hurt him this way that made him so scared about accepting love in all its wonderful forms. But then I heard him saying, what if I'd been waiting to hear for a long time? Actually, he said, you could help me out if you'd moved in with me. I mean, that way I could see the $500 rent you paid me. That's wonderful idea, I said immediately, knowing how embarrassed he was to have asked me that way. I was so deliriously happy that I didn't matter that the rent on my studio was really only $435. Besides, Harold Place was much nicer and bigger, a two-bedroom flat with a view of 240 degrees view of the bay. It was worth the extra money no matter what I shared the place with. So, within a year, Harold and I quit Harns, Kelly, and Davis, and we started Livenduff and Associates. And I went to work there, the project coordinator. And no, he didn't get half the restaurant clients of Harns, Kelly, and Davis. In fact, Harns, Kelly, and Davis threatened to sue if he'd walked away with even one client over the next year. So I gave him pep talk. I gave him a pep talk in the evening when he was discouraged. I told him how he should do more avant-garde thematic restaurant designing, a bit different. Be different, be creative, be himself from the other firms. Be not the same. Who needs another brass or Oakwood bar and grill? Who wants another pasta place and sleek Italian Modano? How many places can you go with the police car launching out of its walls? This town is cock-a-block with restaurants that are just clones of the same old thing. You can find a niche, do something different every time you get Hong Kong investigators who are willing to sink some bucks into American ingenuity. He gave his adoring smile, the one that I said, I love it when you're so naive, and I adored his looking at me like that. So I stammered out my love you. I love you. You could do no theme eating place. You could do a new theme eating place. Home on the range and all home cooked mom stuff. Mom at the kitchen range with the game and apron, and mom waitressing leaning over the telling you to finish your soup. And maybe you could do a novel menu restaurant from fiction, sandwiches from Lawrence Sanders, murder mysteries, just dessert from Laura Empress's heart, and something else with the magic theme or jokes. A gag, a gig. Harold actually listened to me. He took those ideas and he applied them. At Living Thing and Associate, I produced the theme elements for one restaurant called The Fisherman's Tale. One of many prized findings was a yellow varnished wood boat stenciled with the name Overboard, and I was the one who thought the menu should dangle from a miniature fishing poles and the napkins be printed with rulers that have inches translated into feet for a Lawrence of Arabic deli called Tracy's Shack. I was the one who brought the place could have a bizarre effect. I found the replicas of cobras lying on fake Hollywood boulders. I love my work when I don't think about it too much. So really, we're equals, except that Harold makes about 7 times more money than me. He knows that too. Okay, I lost my place. Here we go. Lately, however, this business about being equal started. I was putting the breakfast dishes away, and Harold was warming up the car so we could go to work, and I saw the newspaper spread open on the kitchen counter. Harold's glasses on top, his favorite coffee mug with the chip on the handle off to the side, and for more reasons, seeing all of these domestic signs of familiarity, our daily ritual made me swoon inside. But it was as if I were seeing Harold for the first time. We made love. This feeling of surrendering everything to him was an abandonment without caring what I got in return. When I got to the car, I still had that glow on my feelings and touched his hand and said, Harold, I love you. And he looked in the rear view mirror, backing up the car, and said, I love you too. Did you lock the door? And just like that, I started to think it's not enough. Harold jingles the car keys and says, I'm going down the hill to buy stuff for dinner. Steaks, anybody? Steaks okay? Want anything special? We're out of rice. I discreetly nodded toward my mother, whose back is turned to me. She's looking at the kitchen window at the trellis of the bougainvilleas. And then Harold is out the door, and I heard the deep rumble of the car, then the sound of crumbling gravel as he drives away. My mother and I are alone in the house. I started to water the plants. She is standing on her tiptoes, peering at a list that's stuck on the refrigerator door. Here it comes. This list says Lena and Harold, and under each name are things you've bought and how much they cost. Lena, chicken, veggies, bread, broccoli, shampoo, beer, $19.63. Maria, the cleaning lady, the tip, and the groceries. $65. Oh, and then a shop for petunias and potting soil. $5.15 and $14.11. Oh, photo development. $13.83. Oh, Harold's list. Harold, garage stuff. $25.35. Bathroom stuff. $5.41. Car stuff. $6.57. Light fixture. $87.26. Road gravel. $19.99. Gas. $22. Car smog checked. $35. Movies and dinner. $65. Ice cream. $4.50. Whoa. The way things are going this week, Harold's already spent over $100 more, so I'll owe him Harold about maybe 50 out of my checking account. What is that? Writings, asked my mom in Chinese. Oh, nothing really, just things we share, I say, and casually as I can. I feel embarrassed knowing that she's seeing. I'm relieved that she doesn't see the other side of it. The discussions through the countless talks of Harold, like mascara, shaving lotion, hairspray, big shavers, tampons, athlete foot powder. When we got married at City Hall, he insisted on paying for the whole thing, probably $10. I got my friend Robert to take photos. We held a pretty good event at our apartment. Everyone bringing champagne, and he bought appetizers to bring. We agreed that I should pay only a percentage of the mortgage based on what I earn and what the earnings. Wow. This is written in our prenuptial agreement. Since Harold pays more, he has the deciding vote on how the house should look. It's sleek, spare, and its calls, and its fluids. Nothing disrupt the line, meaning none of my cluttery look. As far vacationist as one have chosen together a 55. The other Harold pays for, with the understanding that it's a birthday or Christmas presents, or an anniversary gift. Oh my goodness. This is you do not share. This you do not share, exclaims my mother in an astonishing voice. And I'm startled, thinking she had read my thoughts about Morguia. But then I see she's pointing to the ice cream on Harold's list. My mother must remember the instant of the fireplace landing where she found me shivering and exhausted, sitting next to that container of regurgitated ice cream. I could never stand that stuff after that. Oh, and I don't eat any of that ice cream he brings home every Friday. Why you do this? My mother was wounded, her sound of a wounded voice, and as if I had put the list on to hurt her. I think how to explain this, recalling the words Harold and I have. So instead I tell my mother, I don't really know. It's something we started before we got married, and for some reason we never stopped. When Harold returns from the store, he starts the charcoal. I unload the groceries, marinate the steaks. Mom sits on the stool, in her granite drinking cup on the counter. She wipes the bottom of the mug as she puts it down. During dinner, keeps Harold's conversation going. He talks about the plans for the house, the skylights, expanding the deck, planting flower beds of tulips and crocuses, and clearing the poison oak and adding another wing, building a Japanese-style tile bathroom. And then he clears the table and starts stacking the plates in the dishwasher. Who's ready for dessert? He asks, reaching into the freezer. I'm full, I'd say. Lena cannot eat ice cream, says my mother. So it seems she's always on a diet. No, she never eat it. She doesn't like. And how Harold smiled, looked puzzled, expecting me to translate what my mother just said. It's true, I say evenly. I've hated ice cream all my life. Harold looks at me with a Chinese look. I assume you were just trying to lose weight. And this is where I'm going to stop. I have to go take my dog for a walk before she has a fit. I will read it up again. I will read again this evening, and then I'll send it on, so there's like going to be 2 parts of this. Thank you, my book buddies. I miss seeing you, and I can hardly wait to be there and see you and read to you in person. Okay? God bless.